Hey guys, Travis with TechRaptor back at Gen Con 2016. I'm with Grant, and we're in the Portal Games booth taking a look at Cry Havoc, the talk of Gen Con 2016. Grant, tell us a little bit about the game, please.
Cool. So, Cry Havoc is a 2 to 4 player, asymmetric, card-driven warfare game in a science fiction setting. You have 4 very different races, and you are moving units around the board, you're attacking guys, and it has this very cool card-driven battle system. There's no dice, so everything that happens is due to your decisions as you play. So it's very dynamic, very player-driven, very explosive.
So the game almost looks like an area control game?
Yes, it's an area control game, and it has, for some of your video game listeners, it's kind of like a classic RTS. So you'll see notes from StarCraft. Did I just say notes like a wine? You'll see things from StarCraft or Command and Conquer. So you're taking control of the territory. You earn points for defeating your units in battle, or defeating your enemy in battle. You earn points for holding territory and getting the crystals from them. So basically, the more you win, the more you control, the more successful you're going to be.
So is there any player elimination in the game? There's
no player elimination. In fact, that's one of the key things about making a game that works with up to 4 people is that it really sucks if you're getting whipped and you're out of the game and you know that you're out for 2 hours. And so you cannot be actually eliminated, nor can you be effectively eliminated. If you're playing well and you're on top of things, you're in the game until the end. But one of the cool things we have is that if you are really doing well and you're exploiting your advantage, the game will actually be sooner, which means that if you're really good at the game, you can win more decisively, just like in a war. And if you're losing very badly, you will lose more quickly, which is sort of merciful.
And it looks like each of the factions is asymmetrical?
Yes, it's very different. So you have the reclusive, spacefaring, super high-tech aliens. They're your more Euro-defensive, passive style player. They want to wall off a portion of the world and exploit its resources and use their technology. You've got the machines. These guys are sort of like the Terminators in space. They're turning this into a fortress world, kind of like an Oblivion. And they can slowly build up this Death Star that just eliminates all their enemies. Then you have the humans, and these are your classic Halo ODST, Starship Trooper dudes, super mobile air cavalry, dudes running off screaming, firing machine guns. They're very mobile. They can take over territory very quickly, lob artillery shells in. Just your classic human faction. I love those guys. I love, Starship Troopers. It's one of my favorite movies.
Right.
And then finally you have the Trogs, and I love the Trogs. These are the indigenous species on the planet. This is their homeworld. And sort of like the bugs in Clendathy popping up, the Trogs are actually going to jump up out of the ground. And they're sort of a gorilla and a gorilla in both the Viet Cong and ape sense.
Okay.
So they're very strong, hulking dudes, and they're just going to pop up out of the ground and just rip machines in half. So you have 4 very different ways of playing. They have different ways of scoring. They have different skills. They have different structures. And again, it's that sense of, StarCraft or Warcraft or Command and Conquer. You're playing very different teams.
And so if you do drop the player count, does that asymmetry still stay as strong?
Yes. So the game plays 2 to 4, and it's fantastic at every player count. So with 2 players, you actually flip the board over, and it's smaller. Okay. Sort of like a knife fight in a phone booth. What's really cool is in 2 and 3 players, you still play with the Trogs, but they're not controlled by a player.
Oh, okay.
So they're on the planet, and so what happens is early on, if I move in, they're going to pop up, and I still have to fight them. But what's cool is they're not a dummy player. You don't have to manage them, and they're not fiddly. What just happens is if I'm fighting them, the other player will just quickly control them in battle.
Oh, okay.
And as they're eliminated, they're removed from the planet, and then we'll get to fight each other. In 3-player, the same thing. You remove the Trog player, but they're still here. And then in 4-player, 1 player gets to play as the Trogs. So we made the game work really well at every player count. And the only difference is that you get to experiment with different factions at different player counts. And at 2 players, it's a shorter game. At 3 players, it's a shorter game. So 2 players can knock it out in under an hour if they know what they're doing.
Okay, and you said about 2 hours for a full complement of players?
Yeah, if it's 4 players, it's about 2 hours. If they know what they're doing, obviously the game's very quick. It moves very quickly. I think people could probably play it in 90 minutes, but that's once you know the factions and you know what's happening.
Okay. So you mentioned that the battle system is player-driven. Can you give us an example of how it works?
Yeah, so this is one of the big innovations for Cry Havoc. So there's no dice in the game. So everything is based on the decisions that you make and how you play your cards. So in a battle, it's not win or lose. You're choosing which objectives you want to fight for.
Oh, okay.
So the idea is, let's say you're a commander on the dropship. You're saying, hold this territory at all costs. I don't care how many men we lose. Or you're saying, go capture those guys so we can study them and get that intel. Or you're saying, kill them all, we'll come back later. So there are 3 different battle objectives: territory, prisoners, or attrition. So let's say we're fighting here with the machines versus the Trogs. The attacker will place his units on what he wants to accomplish. Then the Trog player comes in and places their units on whatever they want to do. Then you can play cards to move units around, add more units from off the board, and shift them. And so it's based on how you set up, what buildings are in play. For example, the humans have artillery that can affect things. So once it's all resolved, you just go from top down and you resolve it based on each objective. So This is super innovative. There's no game that does this, and it means that every battle is very different, and there's a lot of decisions based on, man, what cards do I have in my hand? What do I need to save for the battle? Who am I fighting? What's possible with what they can do? And so this is one of those things that makes the game not, oh, I lost because the dice rolled badly. It's, I lost because I didn't plan correctly. I didn't fight well.
Right, and when you're fighting, do you go back and forth as you're playing cards?
Yes, so you can play as many cards as you have. And so what that means is, let's say you're only in one battle. You could spend all your cards on that one battle. But let's say you're in 3 battles. You have to be like, well, I don't think I can win this one, but I really want to win that one, so I'm going to save all my cards. So you might just give up here. And the cool thing is, unlike a lot of games, losing a battle does not knock you out of the game. It's not going to put you in last place. You might just lose a guy, but who cares? You'll come back. You can repair that. And so this means that you really need to figure out, what's an important battle that I need to win, what's an important territory I need to hold, based on the structures I want to build, based on where the most crystals are.
Right, and it looks like each of these different areas has a different effect for the person that wins.
Yeah, this one's all about who controls the territory and you score points. This one you can immediately steal a prisoner, which means that every round you score 1 point for every prisoner you've taken, and your opponent's unit pool gets smaller. And then here it's just straight out, for every unit here you're going to kill an enemy unit and score a point for that.
Awesome.
So one of my favorite things is, yeah, sure, you get the territory. I killed all your guys. And if I move first next round, I can come right back and just take it from you.
So you mentioned the card play from battle. Are there any elements of deck building this game?
Yeah, so a lot of games are deck building entirely, but in Cry Havoc it's just one side element. So there are actually 4 different terrain decks, jungles, deserts, mountains, and oceans. And as an action, you can draw 2 of these, look at them, and keep one, and then you return the other. So what's cool about them is they all give you a resource that benefits one of those main actions. So this gives you movement, the mountains help you build more structures, the desert helps you get 1 of each with a card draw bonus, and then the jungles give you a recruit bonus. But if you do not use it for its resource, it actually gives you a battle tactic. However, you can only use it in the appropriate region. So here in the Callous Ravine, I can use mountain or ocean tactics cards. And the idea there thematically is I am training and equipping my units to fight better there. So in the ocean, this is naval ships, it's air support and carriers. And what this means is, if I know I'm going to fight a big battle here, I might start spending turns to draw more of those cards to help me out. If I'm playing the machines who build a lot of structures, I'm going to go in and get mountains for those structure resources. So based on who you're playing, what skills are in play, and what's happening on the board, you might change how your deck is built. And that's sort of a nice strategic layer that players who play the game a lot will really learn that super key to the game. That's how they're going to win and really get that advantage.
And if you really have savvy opponents, they might actually see what you're preparing to do.
Yeah, so it's a good way to project force. So let's say I only have 1 guy here and I'm worried about you moving in. I might just start staring you down and drawing mountain cards and be like, yeah, come at me.
Okay.
I'm going to be able to take you down. Because the tactics cards actually can turn 2 units into 5 units. So you think, oh, I've got 5 to 2, I've got this. No, I'm going to use these tactics cards to really screw you over.
So we've been bluffing, moving, counter-moving. How do we determine who actually wins the game?
The game is won by the person with the most points.
Okay.
You're going to score points that when scoring is enabled, which is a player-driven thing, players get 1 point for every crystal in their region, with the Trogs only getting a half point rounded up for every crystal in the region. So you want to take over these territories that are worth a lot, and when you're in a good advantage, you want to enable scoring so that you make the most points when it is to your advantage.
Awesome. And so is the game round-driven? You said the players initiate scoring?
So the game is played in up to 5 rounds.
Okay.
Every round you resolve an event. However, if your scoring token zips past an unresolved event, you actually kick that event forward, and then you resolve multiple events in the next round.
Okay.
And the idea is that each event represents 1 potential round, but if you resolve 2 in 1 round, that means you have a shorter game. So if you're scoring very quickly, there's actually more events more quickly, and the game is shorter.
Okay. So it might actually pay for a player to try to rush to the end of the game.
Yes, but some factions, that's not as good for them, or they might need to set up and then really quickly exploit.
So you mentioned needing resources in order to build structures. What kind of structures can players put on the board?
So every player has 3 unique structures, and the robots, the machines, actually have 5 unique structures. The structures are a way for you to sort of support your strategy and change what you're doing. So the machines are very good at pumping out units with their factories. Typically you can only reinforce on your headquarters, but the machines let you reinforce out in the field. They also have ways to kill guys that are adjacent to them or all over the map. So it basically supports your war effort and gives you an advantage. That also ties into sort of your faction asymmetry, what you're good at. And so you want to control regions to build structures, and then the structures give you those bonuses that you can then activate.
Awesome. All right, everybody, we're going to jump into a quick gameplay demo, so check for the link in the description below. Awesome.